right, now first up, we're gonna have Enid Partika. She's gonna be playing a little bit of violin for us to kind of get us going, kind of start off our live stream with a little bit of soothing music. So without further ado, she will start playing for us.
Alrighty. Okay. Here we go. Alrighty. Now we're back for part 2. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. And I'll take it over to Will.
Starting now. What's up, everyone? Here for another episode of Kitchen Mushroom Cultivation. I'll show you the updates from last week. I'll do another camera. But this is what we did. I think it was last week. We took the coffee ground, mixed them with the pasteurized newspaper. And this honestly grew a lot faster than I thought. This was pretty much ready, I don't know, 3 days, 3 to 4 days after. 3 to 4 days after we were done doing another workshop. And here are the stem butts, also from last week. You can see all this nice growth right here, all through here. We'll fold this a little bit and see how exactly it grew. See, it's going all the way through the paper. Like it's holding this. I don't even think I could undo this. It's holding it together so well. So that is just absolutely full of nice oyster mushroom. So you could basically take this and mix this with some, shred this up, and probably mix this with some more coffee grounds or straw, or you could use the same newspaper. You can basically keep expanding this and put it into some other containers and make yourself some more mushrooms. So that's a super easy way to get a source of spawn if you don't have any. So today I'm going to show you a technique to basically take a wild mushroom that you can get, you can find and collect it on the ground, in the forest, or wherever you are. So if you find wild mushroom, you can basically use this technique to try and cultivate a wild mushroom on your own. So last week I showed you some tinfoil, some mushroom caps that were on tinfoil. So basically what I was doing there was I was taking the mushroom spores from the mushroom cap and depositing them on this piece of tinfoil. So if I open up this piece of tinfoil, I'll bring it to the other camera. You look inside there. There's a whole bunch of brown powder, and that's actually the spores from the mushroom. So we're going to basically add these spores to a mixture of molasses and water with a little bit of salt to prevent any growth of bacteria. So we'll first start by just rubbing this oil a little bit to try and just rub some of those spores off so I can collect them and have them fall into the container. So I'm just going to rub the foil together, kind of get a little pile of powder in that crease right there. Going. So to start this off, you're gonna just want to grab some water. I recommend using filtered water, distilled water, or rainwater, anything that doesn't have chlorine. You can also just take normal tap water and let it sit for a little bit, like a day or so, to kind of let that chlorine off gas. You're gonna boil this mixture anyways to kill any potential bacteria that may be on there. So letting it sit may kind of be unnecessary anyways. But you want to grab like a gallon of water. I think this is a gallon. This is 1 gallon. And you're going to want to find some sort of sugar source. And I'm using powdered molasses because this is what we had at the garden. This is what we use for our compost tea brewing. But you can use honey. You can use white sugar. I just like molasses because not only does it have the sugar we want, but it also has the little bit of extra protein in there, a little bit extra amino acids that can help these mushrooms grow. So we're going to want to add about, I don't know, a tablespoon's worth per gallon of water. This is a really, this is a very low tech method, so proportions aren't super critical. So we just want to take about a tablespoon. I really should have a funnel. I don't, so this using my hands. It's about a tablespoon right there. And then you want to grab plain normal salt. I don't know, grab about half a teaspoon of that per gallon. Just throw that in there. And just give that a swirl. Mix all that together. So yeah, you're gonna want to take this and then boil it. Just boil it really quick. Just bring it to a boil and then turn it off. Let it cool down to room temperature. And that'll basically remove most of the bacteria in there and make it a lot easier for the spores to germinate and start growing inside this liquid and not have any bacteria eat the mycelium as it starts to grow. And that's also why we added the salt to prevent some of those bacteria from possibly growing. So here's one that I did earlier this morning. So I have the salt in here, I have molasses in here. It's been boiled, and I've transferred it to this container right here with the screw in, so I can transport it easier. So just unscrew it. All right. Grab our spores. Stay. Okay. I have those. We have a little fine line right there. And then we'll basically gently tap spores we've kind of gathered. Kind of make sure those fall in there. And it may not look like a lot of spores are making in there, but just a tiny bit of that spore, that brown powder in there could be like millions of spores. So we're actually getting quite a few in there. We just can't see it as easily. And now you can only do this with certain wild mushrooms, obviously. Ones that will grow on on dead plant material, and so you can basically grow it in a substrate like this. You can't do this for any sort of mycorrhizal mushroom, so you can't do this for like a chanterelle mushroom, or if you find a nice porcini mushroom on the ground, you couldn't do this just because those have to grow in association with certain trees. And there are actually very few mushrooms you can do this technique with, but the most common one you could probably do this with is an agaricus type mushroom, which is a very common genus of mushroom you can find. So this is an agaricus I found at the garden, and so actually agaricus is the most commonly cultivated mushroom. So that's why you can take a lot of these. That's why it's even possible to take these wild agaricus and even try to cultivate them like this. So this may not work. It's very hard to determine whether this works or not, but it's a very easy technique, and it's also it can be done without having to go buy any spores, and you can do it with a mushroom you can find in there. So you can see the spores in there. Let's give that a mix. Give that a mix. And then you're going to want to grab a air pump. This little air pump I got a little piece of tube, and then a little tiny stainless steel straw at the end, just to kind of weigh it down and prevent the tube from going in. So we're just going to keep this jug of spore, molasses, and salt aerated. keep it aerated, and just allow oxygen to reach the mycelium as the spores start to germinate, and also prevent any anaerobic bacteria from forming, which will potentially foul the mixture. So. Get that tube all the way to the bottom. So we'll basically leave that for the next 48 hours or so. 48 hours to sort of brew and allow those spores to start germinating inside that liquid. And as they germinate, they'll start eating the molasses, and they'll grow bigger. They'll grow bigger, and then each tiny piece of that mycelium that grows out from the spores will then take this liquid and we'll spread it around your garden. You can spread it into areas of wood chips with grass, different sorts of materials that you have, different sorts of plants you have around your garden, and you can basically try and get this mushroom to start growing in your garden. So yeah, after 48 hours, you basically take this and start. Well, actually, you can take this liquid, you can dilute it with even more distilled water or non-chlorinated water, and basically expand the solution, because once the spores germinate, there's going to be billions of tiny pieces of mycelium in there. So you can dilute that mycelium. You can dilute that tenfold, and you still have a million little pieces of mycelium. So you can expand this, or you can just dump it in your garden directly. But in terms of how long you can leave this, I would only recommend leaving it for about 24 hours maximum. Just because any longer, you're probably going to get a little bit too much bacteria growth, and the mycelium will start to, the mushroom spores, as they grow, will start to run out of nutrients, and the growth will start to slow down a little bit. So use it quickly, but this is a pretty basic technique anyway, so really not that much of a loss if it doesn't really go well. And it's just kind of fun because if anyone you ever have any experience in mushroom cultivate, like mushroom lab technique, this is basically like a very crude version of what's called a liquid culture, which is actually a very effective way to kind of start spawning or start creating cultures in your lab with basic materials such as that. So that about does it for that. I have a couple things that I made the other day. Here's a bag of oyster mycelium that I made, or a bag of oyster mushrooms that I made. It's got coffee grounds in here. It's got coffee grounds, newspaper, and corn cobs. And I also had a bunch of artichoke peelings. So I took the artichoke peelings, I pasteurized those too, and I threw them in the bag as well. So see if we can actually grow the oyster mushrooms on some of our regular compost that we would normally throw in our compost bucket in the back. So we have that. Also got another one. This one has all the corn cobs in it actually. So we'll see if that wants to grow as well. See if we can get mushrooms from artichoke leaves. Oh, and I forgot to show this earlier, but we also did the stem butt technique with some of the agaricus mushrooms that we're actually doing the spore culture with. We'll see if those actually grew or anything. Open it up. See, I'll go to the other camera. I don't know if you see any. I don't know if there's any. Can't really see any mycelium in there. Sort of smells. Kind of smells like ammonia, so that's not a good sign. I could probably mean that it's just decomposing in there. But we'll open it up. We'll see if we can see something in there. See if anything grew. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything in there. It's looking pretty dark. So I don't think this technique works with the agaricus mushrooms, but it was an experiment. It clearly works really well with the oyster mushrooms. So fortunately, we couldn't get that to grow, but that's all right. We'll have plenty more for y'all next week. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.